London in recent days. You've been meeting with lots of business leaders and CEOs. For the most part, we don't know who those people are. Can you tell us who those people are? And will you commit that your office share who you meet with at a business level?
Yeah, I think we share broad. It's a good question. Actually, don't know what we share, to be honest. I mean, I was asking.
Can you tell us a few of the people you've met?
We met today with a number of infrastructure, basically infrastructure type investors, so people who have global capital invest around the world, largely in infrastructure projects. And the sense that what I was looking for was partly obviously to tell the story of what we're doing in Canada, major projects, improving the tax system, moving forward fiscal responsibility, but also to hear from them perceptions of Canada, where they're investing elsewhere, what's driving their investment, what are the major themes, so that we're setting up the right partnerships for the country.
Probably the scariest open letter I've ever seen written to a prime minister. And originally I thought it was fake, and I looked it up, I pulled it up, and it's 100% legit. Watch this. Unfortunately, the picture cut it off, but this is on the Enbridge website, and it's called Build Canada Now, an open letter to the Prime Minister of Canada. And it literally starts off by saying that the national economy is moving in the wrong direction and Canadians deserve prosperity, not uncertainty. And this is where it gets crazy. They literally spelled out a plan for Mark Carney on what they call urgent action that is needed now. And they outline everything from simplify regulations, commit to firm deadlines, grow production, attract investment, and incent Indigenous co-investment opportunities. Just wait until the end, you will see how many CEOs have signed this letter. It wasn't just one. But they say this is a call to action that is urgent, and that there's persistent indicators that Canada is moving in the wrong direction. We need to improve productivity to create jobs, and it requires swift and decisive action. In other words, not taking the summer off like they did. And I'll refer to this as CEO speak, that is basically a backhand. Given your background, that's in being in investment banking, being at Brookfield, being in Goldman Sachs, and being the Governor General for the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, you understand that the private sector and public markets require clarity and certainty to make long-term investments necessary to realizing this sector's potential. They're basically telling him, you know this, you know better, you have not taken decisive action. And these are all the signatures. These are some of the biggest companies in Canada, and it literally goes on and on and on. No matter how fast I scrolled, the list just kept growing bigger and bigger. This to me is the canary in the coal mine moment, where you have some of the biggest leaders, not just in Canada, but in the world telling you, we're headed in the wrong direction, you know better, we need to take swift and urgent action now. They even laid out a plan of what the government needs to do. Did you notice in that plan, they didn't mention government subsidies? There was nothing about free money from the government, from our tax dollars. Look at what their top two asks are. Simplify regulations. Get rid of the red tape. Commit to firm deadlines. Do your job on time. Then once you have that, you will grow production, will attract more investment, and let's get the Indigenous First Nations people to co-invest in these opportunities. They just gave the Liberal Party a blueprint.
Recently, the Prime Minister, our jet-setting Prime Minister, in his trips to New York City and London, England, met with several prominent business as well as investment leaders. When he was asked on the weekend who he met with, the Prime Minister refused to say. He refused to be transparent. He merely said he met with, quote, investment-type investors, close quote. Quote, people who have global capital, close quote. And then he said, we'll need significant capital in respect of certain unnamed and unspecified projects. Now, we know that there has never been a prime minister with more potential conflicts of interest than this prime minister. We have never had a prime minister with an ethics screen as vast as the one that is imposed on this prime minister in light of those multitude of potential conflicts of interest. And we know that this so-called ethics screen has no mechanisms to ensure that there are checks and balances to see that it in fact is being triggered when it ought to be. Instead, we are left to simply trust the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and the Clerk of the Privy Council, who serve at the pleasure of the Prime Minister and answer to the Prime Minister, and who are therefore not independent. That simply isn't good enough to simply say we're going to trust them, because, frankly, we don't know whether the ethics screen should have been triggered. We don't know if what was discussed, whether the Prime Minister stands in any way to personally benefit from any discussions, any decisions that might be in the process of being made arising from the discussions that he had in London and New York. And we know that despite the fact that the Prime Minister is subject to this ethics screen, he may make decisions that he stands to personally benefit from. I say at the very least, well, that's unacceptable, and there needs to be, in the face of that, at the very least, some level of transparency. Canadians deserve to know who the Prime Minister is meeting with, why he was meeting with them, and they need to have the assurance that this very flimsy ethics screen is, at the very least, being triggered when it ought to be. And the Prime Minister has provided no answers to any of those questions. And so with that, I would put on notice the following motion, that having regard for the fact that the Prime Minister met with several business as well as investment leaders in his recent trips to New York City, New York, and London, England, and the Prime Minister has refused to disclose which individuals and/or entities he met with during those trips, and is subject, pursuant to the Conflict of Interest Act, to an ethics screen intended to prevent him from making decisions related to 103 companies that would place him in a conflict of interest, the committee order from the Prime Minister's office production of records which comprehensively list each individual and, if applicable, the name of which entity, corporation, organization, and/or agency they represented and their job title that was present in a meeting with the Prime Minister, the time and date at which those meetings took place, and what was discussed in those meetings from and including September 21, 2025 to and including September 28, 2025, and that these records be deposited with the clerk of the committee in both official languages no later than 1 week following the adoption of this motion.
Do we really need as many different codes as we have? I mean, subtly, there are many different interpretations that distinguish the various codes from one another. This lends itself to confusion, which is perpetuated by a dueling banjos of rules for parliamentarians interpreted by different officers of Parliament. Having a consistent set of rules will help build a more consistent culture around what a conflict of interest is or is not. I have a personal pet peeve about a separate set of conflict of interest rules created by the Lobbying Commissioner, but that is a study of a different act for a different day. Speaking of which, I think all post-employment limitations should be placed in one act. You may know that there are post-employment obligations that are found in the Lobbying Act. I also don't like those limitations because they treat all designated public office holders as one giant class, which they are not. Certain aspects of those rules came to be after an order in council, which might not have been as legal as we would like. Please ask me about that. Fourth, I think that there should be clarity on the ability of members to advocate on behalf of their constituents. there is a statutory limitation on improperly, in quotes, using one's office to advance a private interest. But that is not necessarily the case for individuals who become parliamentary secretaries or ministers. I would refer to you the Commissioner's own guidance, which precludes you from, quote unquote, using your position to influence a decision to further a private interest. Advocating on behalf of a constituent's private interest should never be seen as creating a conflict. The technical language of that document needs to reflect the statutory term improperly influence. It should never be improper to advance.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think if we are being honest with ourselves here, this motion is about grandstanding at this point in time, that the motion to basically have more information about the super secret meetings that have been disclosed and the people that the Prime Minister met with that are public knowledge and on the public record now. This doesn't seem to be a particularly good use of the committee's time, but the fact that these meetings have already been disclosed, the fact that we have lists in front of us of the people that the Prime Minister met with, I think it should be within the prerogative of this committee to focus on work that will advance our understanding of access to information and ethics rather than the grandstanding that we're seeing here.
Of companies or individuals that were disclosed, we don't know if it's the full list, and it wasn't proactively disclosed. If I'm not mistaken, it was only released after media questions and after Mr. Cooper moved the motion at committee. So this is a matter where we're dragging, kicking and screaming a Prime Minister. And look, this isn't my first day. I've been here for a few years, and just the existence of the rules has not been demonstrated to be enough for Liberal ministers and Liberal Prime Ministers to follow them. Justin Trudeau was a serial ethical lawbreaker, right? Time and time again. And ministers in his cabinet, some of those ministers who broke ethics laws are still in the Liberal cabinet. So you'll have to excuse us if we just can't say, my goodness, this is so unbelievable. The Conservatives are doing politics here, and they're just not taking the Right Honourable Prime Minister at his word.
Why would we?
We haven't been given any reason to. Unfortunately, we have to force disclosure from the Prime Minister.
They are, what I'm hearing from my colleague opposite is actually an undermining of that framework, because he suggests that it is this committee's role to ensure that members go above and beyond, that in some ways they take it under their own advisement as to what are the rules that they should follow. Not the rules that are on the books, not the rules that are delineated in the law and in the Act, and the timeframes that have been established by Parliament, but that somehow there is that members must go above and beyond. It is a strange time when Conservatives consider it to be a best approach that parliamentarians are outside or above the law.
And the chair votes yes.
Yeas 5, nays 4.
Okay, the motion carries. No other business.